Me, but also you. The Pharaoh fast forwards his favorite foreign film, Powder Donut. Okay, what's my line?
The only line I see here on the script is get options based on your budget with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive.
Oh man, that's a tongue twister, huh? I'm sorry, I'm gonna need a few more minutes. Bulbous Walrus, the Bulbous Walrus.
The Name Your Price tool, only from Progressive.
The owl ran afoul of the comatose coxswain.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
Time to get you dialed into the biggest stories of the day. This is the Daily 10 with Matt Chernoff.
All right, it's time to get to the Tuesday edition of the Daily 10. Thank you guys so much for making this a part of your day. I hope it's a habit. Love to see those numbers going up, and away, and I thank you guys very much for making this a part of your podcast lineup. Wherever it is you get your favorite podcasts, by subscribing or following, it'll be waiting for you each and every day. All right, let's get to the business of the day. We start with the Braves, who after a day off, and a much-needed day off, remember the Braves had played 18 games in 17 days. Braves will begin a quick 3-game road trip at St. Louis against the Cardinals. First pitch tonight at 8:15 with Max Fried and John Lester, the mound matchup. Now, the Braves will face 3 lefties in this series, which you would think should be a nice advantage, especially after the Braves made some of their trade additions last week. Here's what we know, right? Ozzie Albies crushes left-handed pitching. Jorge Soler has always handled left-handed pitching well, and I looked at the numbers this morning. Adam Duvall's got some weird reverse splits this year against left-handed pitching, but it's a very small sample. Adam's always handled left-handed pitching well, so that should be, again, a nice advantage for the Braves. By the way, the Braves got some help last night. The Marlins beat the Mets to cut the deficit in the East to 3.5 games. In fact, you have now 3 teams, Mets, Phillies, and Braves, all separated by just 3.5. I don't think the Mets are going anywhere. In fact, I think the Mets could start to hit some really hard times based on the schedule they have coming up. And I wanted to do a comparison for a moment. And we said the Braves just finished up 18 games in 17 days, and the schedule included some good competition, including having to go on the road to New York for that 5-game series, playing San Diego, just playing Milwaukee. Well, now the Braves will get a bit of a schedule break. They will play average St. Louis here for 3 games. Then they will play against Washington, who tore things down. Then against another average club in Cincinnati before facing the Nationals again, and then Miami. So it's at least a chance on paper for the average Braves to take advantage of an average portion of their schedule. Meanwhile, the Mets will get 3 more games at Miami. Then there are 3 at Philadelphia, and then 3 against Washington. But after that, boy, things get really rough. This is a stretch I don't remember seeing too much for any team. The Mets will play 13 straight games against the Giants and the Dodgers. It's 3 at home against LA, then 4 at San Francisco, 4 at the Dodgers, and then 3 back at home in New York against San Francisco. So this would be the portion of the schedule where if you're the Braves and you can make that push, it would be optimal because the Braves will face this group of NL West teams coming up here starting at the end of the month and then heading into September. Again, Braves and Cardinals tonight at 8:15 from St. Louis. We're brought to you by the Daily Draft in downtown Woodstock. If you're looking for a great spot for lunch today, the Daily Draft is an easy find on Main Street in downtown Woodstock. They will offer you 10% off your lunch order when you mention this podcast, The Daily 10. You could also peruse a great menu. This is a chef-inspired menu, not that deep-fried sports bar that you've been to. In fact, this is not your father's sports bar. It's the ultimate sports bar experience with wall-to-wall flat screens, self-serve taps, which is very cool, a craft bar, a chef-inspired menu that I can brag about beginning to end, a walk-up window that before you even walk through the doors at the Daily Draft, you can make your drink purchase or on the way out, take a drink with you and enjoy downtown Woodstock. You can go to thedailydraft.net to check out the menu and some of the great events they have going on. And again, when you go for lunch, mention the Daily 10, and they'll take 10% off your lunch order. Okay, so NBA free agency began last night, and tons of money thrown around, some of it better spent than others, but this is what happens in free agency. Teams with money to spend essentially lose their mind in free agency. John Hollinger of The Athletic noted that less than 90 minutes after free agency began, we had 22 new free agent contracts plus a couple of trades that were already made and 2 huge extensions. You should go peruse this list of like Alex Caruso's and Nerlens Noel's and Evan Fournier's. Decent to good players that are getting paid like really good to great players, and it's always the danger of we have cap room, there are no great players, so we're going to overspend to bring in Evan Fournier or Alex Caruso, or we're going to repay some of our own guys big money to stick around, and that's a lot of what happened. Now the Hawks, they got busy last night. They finalized a max extension deal with Trae Young, and we knew this was coming, for 5 years and $172.5 million. There is a super max trigger in this that could push the deal up to $207 million if Trae makes All NBA next season, which is quite plausible. The deal also includes an early termination clause. It's kind of like a fifth-year player option, meaning Trae can decide to terminate that final year of the deal and hit free agency again. But the bottom line is now the Hawks have Trae locked up for at least another 5 years because he has the final year coming up of his original deal and then 4 of the new max contract. Now, Trae last night tweeted when the deal was done, never let anybody, and he wrote anybody in all caps, tell you you can't do something. You got to be happy for that kid because all he heard from the time he walked through the doors at Oklahoma to the time he was drafted by the Hawks, what he couldn't do, how his size was an issue, how he was going to be a scorer, but he wasn't going to be a winner. He just carried his team to the Eastern Conference Finals at 22 years old, and he's well-deserved of that max deal. The Hawks also found themselves a backup center last night, agreeing to terms with Gorgui Dieng on a 1-year, $4 million deal. Dieng is a 6'10", 255-pound center. He's 31 years old. He was very affordable, and he's been an average to above-average player in his career. And what the Hawks are going to ask from him is to fill minutes that Onyeka Okongwu would have taken for the first several months of this season. Dieng averaged in his career just under 8 points and 6 boards. He also has hit 36% from three. Not that he takes a high volume, but it's nice to have a center who can step out and hit that shot if needed. So again, to fill the minutes of Onyeka Okongwu, this makes perfect sense. Travis Schlenk has now filled 2 of his bigger roles with the backup point guard with earlier in the week DeLon Wright, and now Gorgui Dieng signing the deal last night to become the backup center. So those 2 spots are filled. The Hawks also re-signed Solomon Hill to a 1-year deal. The assumption here is a much smaller role for Solomon, just like it was supposed to be a year ago. But then the injury bug bit the Hawks over and over again, and there was no DeAndre Hunter, and there was no Cam Reddish at times, and they were without Gallo, and they were at times without Bogey. So Solomon played a much larger role than you would expect. Cross your fingers and knock on wood there are no big injuries, and he becomes just more of a locker room presence and more depth for the team. Now, there is nothing to report on John Collins. There were some early indicators over the last few days that it sounded like the Hawks and Collins were close to a 5-year, $120+ million deal. But then Shams Charania last night, right before free agency began, released a video where he said he hears the Hawks and John Collins camp. They are not close. Now, that doesn't mean it's time to freak out and worry because they both know where this is headed. It's one of 2 ways. The Hawks are either going to play this out to restricted free agency where John gets a huge offer, if not a max, and they have to match it, or before they get to that point, add the 5th year, give him the $20 to $25+ million a year and get the deal done. There is one wrinkle in this. With all the money that was spent last night by teams, probably does limit some of the opportunity for John to get maxed. There are still some teams with salary cap space and others that can create more. Remember, before free agency began, we heard the Spurs were very interested. The Minnesota Timberwolves were interested, and 2 or 3 other teams. But again, you have to wonder now about the cap space for those teams, how that would affect John Collins moving forward. But again, at the recording of this podcast, which is Tuesday morning, nothing official yet done with John Collins. All right, one final note as the Falcons continue training camp today with pads on for the first time, so they get a chance to hit each other, which I know they always enjoy. They're also preparing for their first scrimmage, which will happen Saturday at Mercedes-Benz. They've sold around 25,000 tickets for that scrimmage. Now, I'll be there in a scouting capacity, you understand, because that's my job, to report what I see. I don't want to jinx this, and I'll say no jinx 50 times if I have to. So far, all things have been very quiet from Flowery Branch, which is a good thing. The only stuff that makes noise during training camp are injuries. See the Colts and Carson Wentz. Or contract drama, and you can point to any number of years gone by, holdouts and any of that stuff. Neither is the case in Flowery Branch. So with 10 days before they will hit the field against the Tennessee Titans for their preseason debut. Let's hope it remains quiet. You want training camp to be boring, tedious, with very little in the way of stories and attention, because when the attention comes, now you're the Indianapolis Colts asking Jacob Eason to become QB1, or you're talking about, a young player, which we don't get much of anymore, but with a holdout, the Jets were without Zach Wilson when they opened camp. That's the stuff that gets the noise, and you don't want that noise. We're brought to you by the Daily Draft in downtown Woodstock. Go have lunch there today. Tell them Matt sent you. They'll take 10% off your lunch order. I love local businesses. Sean Daly and his great staff at the Daily Draft, they do a phenomenal job. They'll take 10% off that lunch order. To find out more, go to thedailydraft.net, see the menu, check out the tailgate box, which you're going to need getting ready for football season. We have a couple of great contests and giveaways that I'll be telling you about and promotions with the Daily Draft coming up around the corner. If you would subscribe or follow the pod wherever it is you get your favorite podcasts, now I will join you on the radio this afternoon in Atlanta on 680 The Fan, and we're back again tomorrow for the next edition of the Daily 10.
Subscribe to the Daily 10 now and get the latest breaking news and biggest stories of the day every morning. Get more at 680thefan.com or subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google, or wherever you get your favorite shows.
Me, but also you. The Pharaoh fast forwards his favorite foreign film, Powder Donut. Okay, what's my line?
The only line I see here on the script is get options based on your budget with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive.
Oh man, that's a tongue twister, huh? I'm sorry, I'm gonna need a few more minutes. Bulbous Walrus, the Bulbous Walrus.
The Name Your Price tool, only from Progressive.
The owl ran afoul of the comatose coxswain.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.